Hello and welcome to this presentation on human-wildlife conflict with some Belize Wildlife and Referral Clinic case examples. My name's Dr. Isabel. I'm the veterinarian and director at the BWRC, and you can see our vision as a veterinary and teaching institution is wildlife conservation and sustainable development in cooperation. As to the contents, I will talk a little bit about the causes, prevention, and then give you mostly case examples seen over the past 10 years at the wildlife clinic. Unfortunately, I do have to talk a little bit about animal cruelty and why this is important. And I will also ever so briefly, of course, talk about the Wildlife Ambassador Program and the One Health approach under which all of these presentations are recorded and presented. So the most important message of this talk is probably be safe, always educate yourself first, and call our hotline for advice whenever you see wildlife in trouble or wildlife gives you trouble, aka human-wildlife conflict. Our 615-5159 number is available 24/7. Here we have some examples of conflict victims that have either been hit by bullets or windows. And if we talk about the list of human-wildlife conflict species, it's actually a very long list. We could start and spend an entire day and workshop talking about jaguars and other carnivores causing conflict over livestock. I have a few slides on that. Same goes for crocodiles. Those are big conflict species. I am sure that most of you have encountered conflict with at least one of these species here. Raccoons very commonly attracted to food sources, and the list goes on and on. Most of these animals are attracted to food sources in our backyard or food that we provide. So why is this so important to us as an organization? We have realized that about 50% of our intakes of patients at the clinic in the last 10 years were linked to conflict with humans. So as I said, some come for the food, some come for the housing. And then we have also several examples of false myths that lead to fear, then causing conflict and often leading with the death of wildlife. Example, barn owl would be many myths linking these to bad luck or death, which is of course all false. Yet barn owls are often attracted to yards due to ample supply of rodents because they're excellent rodent hunters. This is often caused by available food for rodents, which may be garbage. And then owls, if the third whammy comes added to it and there is access to an attic, then owls may nest in there and be a recipe for conflict. We have had, so first examples here, some really tragic victims being ultra rare raptors, with Hope the harpy eagle, who was shot and died in 2010. And then this young solitary eagle, which is a species that is even more rare than our harpy eagles, was shot and died as a consequence. Here is a bit more recent example. This is actually an X-ray of an ornate hawk eagle, where you can see multiple shattered bones, as well as lead fragments, as well as a body cavity here filled with blood and no more lung space. So this bird was already dead when it arrived. It was shot out of conflict, potentially over chickens. And it is not always an easy solution, but for example, enclosures can be built for chickens to take refuge from raptors and especially from small carnivores at night. And all of these, or many raptors, have many, many benefits that can help people understand that they're there to assist us with pest control, for example. So education about myths can save many lives. This was another sad case where this animal was found under a pile of rocks, and it was stoned because people were afraid that this animal would stick its tongue through the ear into a person's brain and suck this brain out, which is, of course, very far from the reality. These are very harmless, one could say. Anteaters, of course, do not mess with them because they have strong claws, but their tongue is only there to eat ants. So here is a whole long list of further myths. There are actually many of them that we commonly encounter as well. So number one here, a mother will reject her baby if humans have touched it. This is not true. I cannot emphasize this enough. Put it back in the nest. Mama will most likely take it back. Hence, call us if you've touched it and you have any doubts. Porcupines cannot shoot their quills. They are firmly attached, and we have seen multiple porcupines that were killed out of fear. I already mentioned the barn owls. They're not bad luck. They're actually excellent pest control. And if there are no rats, then there will most likely also not be barn owls trying to nest in a yard. We can certainly repair broken wings. It very much depends on the case and needs to be seen by a veterinarian. And not all snakes are dangerous. We only have 9 venomous species, over 50 that are not venomous, and most of our venomous species are rare as well. We do actually have a separate presentation on snakes of Belize to help with the identification of venomous and common non-venomous snakes here in Belize. And yeah, final conclusion, always ask your vet. Hence, you can call our hotline 24/7. Aside being a vet, I am also a certified wildlife rehabilitator, and there are so many different species and situations that it is indeed a science, and this is why we have this hotline to help people understand what is actually happening. So how can we minimize this conflict? There are a few really simple steps, and as said, most times people just don't know why an animal is there or what it is doing or what is normal. So oftentimes education on the species can help minimize a lot of conflict. A lot of conflict is perceived, but actually the animal is just moving through or attracted to something that we inapparently provided, and will move on as soon as we change that. So feeding of wildlife, as well as leaving garbage and food remains, as well as leaving access to walls or attics, are probably the 3 most common causes for conflict that are quite easy to mitigate through knowing about it. So do not feed wildlife, contain your trash well, and close all access to your walls. Don't leave any holes and openings. And if a ventilation screen, for example, falls out on the attic, fix it so that no animals can move in. Yeah, this is not a Belizean example, but one of the internet showcasing the big problem that humans leaving garbage behind causes, because it attracts wildlife into the streets. This is, of course, a risk to wildlife, but in this case, it's also a risk to us driving. Here, that would be our tapirs and jaguars causing significant risk for humans as well. So on to the next example of what causes death: fishing hooks, fishing line, lead shot can cause toxicity, all sorts of garbage, plastic bags clogging up crocodile stomachs, and more that we have seen as examples. How to avoid it: manage garbage properly and do not leave any hunting equipment behind. So lead shot is deadly dangerous if ingested by wildlife. The list of conflict species here is truly extensive, from the eagles via the vultures and the porcupines and opossums and coatis to tamanduas and snakes. Again, half of our intakes were one way or another in conflict with humans, and that's why they are injured. And many times this conflict could have been prevented. So this crocodile was fed. This is also a crocodile that ingested a fishing hook, and this porcupine was hit with rocks out of fear that it would shoot. But again, their quills are firmly attached and they cannot shoot them. It's just very much advised to not touch them because their quills have barbs and they will get stuck in your fingers if you try to touch them. Again, call us. Fear is a most common cause for conflict ending deadly. So this applies to most snakes, but also many other species, and oftentimes is linked to some false myths. So we recommend to learn to ID venomous and common snakes, and we do have a presentation for that, which is also on the Google Classroom already. Here, next example, a howler monkey named Mia, after my late grandmother, who was hit by a car. Again, a little reference to our intakes. About 30% of our patients coming in are found on the roadside, so they have been hit by cars and or walls or windows. We actually classified those in the same category. So why is the howler monkey on the road? Habitat loss, I have not yet mentioned, but of course it has to be mentioned as a major driver for human-wildlife conflict, animals being pushed out of their habitat or coming more into now human-occupied habitats. Yeah, this howler monkey story had a happy ending thanks to our partners at Wild Tracks and many others who helped, and this monkey was returned to the wild. Yeah, the dangers of our highways. Hit by car is a major cause of death for many, many species. So what can you do about it? Just be careful and watch out for typo there, animals crossing, especially at night or dusk and dawn. Slow down and remember to lower your bright lights if you see any eye shine. So this was a margay. This was during COVID lockdown. Unfortunately, this animal succumbed due to the severity of its head trauma in a car accident. So here was another old example. There was a Jabiru stork reported at the airport, and every day he was using his the runway as his walkway. And I thought it must be a debilitated animal. When we went to investigate, we determined it was not debilitated at all. It was fully flighted, and Jabiru storks are frankly said, no joke. They're very dangerous to capture and restrain due to their long beaks and necks that they may use as a defense weapon. And why was he there? He was coming there every day. It didn't take us very long to determine he was coming here. What you see here is, and here you see a plane starting, so there's the runway. Here's a little eatery at the end of the runway, and he was being given food there daily. Hence, the chicken skins that were removed were thrown out there, and he took that as his food source, and he was seen daily coming there to feed. So, as is the common thread for most human-wildlife conflict, there's some sort of human action that attracts these animals and then causes the conflict. Because, of course, was this a big conflict for planes that could not start or land with a ginormous bird on the runway? Yes, that was a life-threatening conflict. And it was caused by him receiving food here every day, which made him come every day. Happy ending to this story, which took several days to capture this animal and he was ultimately relocated out of town, and the eatery was educated to please no longer throw out any food source there because it will attract multiple species of wildlife. So what we recommend as a solution first is always to attempt non-lethal conflict resolution, because you will hear throughout that we have many cases that ended deadly for the patients. So we recommend to, first of all, try to prevent the conflict from happening. We have our much mentioned hotline to help with a proper assessment and, first of all, ID. And in many cases, the first step is to remove what's attracting the animal. If that is not enough, then we have methods of deterrence and or exclusion for different species. There are some simple ones like light and noise or smell, but there are entire books and many different references that we use to come up with the best recommendations case by case. Very often, the first request we receive is for a removal of an animal or relocation, which is often not a good solution, because if we just remove or relocate an animal and we do not remove what caused the animal to be there, the problem is going to be repeated the next day with the next species or the same species returning. And that is besides the fact that the animal that we do relocate, where do we relocate it? Do we make it somebody else's problem? Do we disturb other populations? So relocation is very much a last resort and will often end up with these animals being relocated into captivity. So prevention first, call us for assistance with the assessment and identification. And many times, it can be as simple as removing what attracts the animal to solve this conflict without resorting to lethal means. So to briefly summarize here on conflict prevention, habitat loss, of course, causes a lot of human-wildlife conflict where humans and wildlife habitats meet. It is very often human behavior that encourages the conflict, from providing food sources involuntarily or actively feeding wildlife, which happens in crocodiles and other species. We mentioned that there are many myths and fear that causes threats that are actually not really threats, which can often be solved by education. And again, I cannot overemphasize how important garbage management is. And then we have these deterrence and exclusion methods before we resort to relocation. So we have a whole next presentation to talk about these resources. We have a pocket guide developed for human-wildlife conflict prevention and response in Belize, which gives you a small summary on the most commonly seen species, because in this presentation, of course, I cannot go into very much detail. And of course, this is coupled with this 24/7 hotline, because very often, as you will learn, this conflict is not properly identified. The species is not properly identified, nor is the behavior of the animal or the situation. So, but now I have to come to a slightly darker topic mentioned already. We have to talk a little bit about how conflict can lead to crime. You will learn in other presentations about the Wildlife Protection Act, how all wildlife is protected, and yet humans are allowed to defend their lives, of course, in a life-threatening situation, which may mean that an animal encountered inside a chicken coop or the likes may be shot in self-defense. But removing a skin of any animal, removing any part, whether the animal was a conflict animal or not, is a crime. And I mentioned that jaguar response or jaguar conflict is very important and deserves its own entire workshop. What to do when you have jaguar livestock conflict is call forest department immediately. The sooner you call, the better. There are multiple organizations that assist the forest department in response. The key solution, one of them lays in livestock management, and there are also deterrence methods that can be used, and again, relocation as a last resort. And coexistence, I'm not saying it is easy, but it is possible. But there is help for human wildlife conflict with jaguars available. The official institution to call first is the forest department. If you cannot reach them, you can call our hotline as well, and we will make the connection. So yes, there may be a legal cause to defend a human life, but if skin is taken off, that is a crime. All parts of this animal are protected. So we have that previous one was the example of a beheaded jaguar. So removing the head is illegal. This poor iguana had its feet cut off. Iguanas are perceived as a conflict animal by people, and they may get into people's vegetables at times as well, so they can truly compete with us over some resources. But did you know that serial killers have all been shown to abuse animals before killing humans? So this is certainly very serious cruelty, because this animal was left not dead, but with removed limbs. So a couple more of these examples where, all parts need to be reported to the forest department. Beheading is illegal. Taxidermy without permit is illegal. And this little turtle here had a cross carved into it and was found close, very close to the site of a human sacrificial, religiously linked murder. So those are connected. Conflict can lead to abuse and crime, but this is not to be taken lightly. Here is one more example of an iguana X-ray. This iguana had a bullet lodged in its skull, which led to it dying very, very slowly over time. And reminder, holding an animal abuser responsible or reporting an animal abuser may save a future human's life. Keep that in mind. It's not just the iguana that's getting hurt, slingshotted, or stoned. But animal abuse and cruelty is linked to violent crimes against humans. Two more sad examples where humans caused conflict. There was a case of a crocodile in Orange Walk that ate a dog of an unsuspecting person, because at the same location, another human had regularly at the same time in the day fed this crocodile. And then there was an abuse case in 2013 where somebody was bothered by a howler monkey and encouraged several kids to capture this monkey, which ultimately led to its violent death. This was a very, very sad case, but it also led to the first court case for wildlife abuse, because the forest department said that this was not to be tolerated in Belize. So to lighten the mood a little bit towards the end of the presentation, we do see about 20% of our intakes that are truly orphans or injured wildlife rescued by kind humans, while we see a large portion of intakes caused by conflict, and oftentimes this may end lethal for the animals if we're not allowed to educate or prevent intervention. It's not always so gruesome. We do have some cute orphans as well. And when to call the vet or us, when in doubt, just call us. We're always on standby. Remember zoonotic diseases. You will learn more in other presentations on One Health and zoonosis. That's for you to stay safe. And yeah, any confiscated or injured wildlife should receive a health check by a trained veterinarian in that species. And any animals that are truly orphaned need care ASAP. So hence the 24/7 hotline. So what do we do to assist imperiled wildlife and humans? It's that hotline again, the healthcare emergency response and field support. But we receive also all species of imperiled wildlife under an agreement with the Forest Department. At times, we assist with relocation and capture of dangerous animals, even though this is very rare. Most importantly, we provide training. So under this Wildlife Ambassador program, we provide training in these topics and many more. Next, you will hear about the pocket guide, while Wildlife and the Law is another presentation. And now you will soon hear about the pocket guide on human-wildlife conflict. And so why are we talking about all of this? And what is One Health again? It's that idea that our health is connected to the health of the animals and the environment that we all share. And if we protect one of these, we help to protect all, which is why this entire program was created, to help increase awareness about One Health and improve wildlife emergency response. Here is our little logo that we developed that you may see on some billboards around. And One Health truly connects all of us, and you will learn more about this in its own presentation. We use this approach because we know that we all care about our own safety and health. When we connect this, it helps understanding why animal health is important as well. So next we will introduce the pocket guide. And yeah, there is a whole list of about 15 topics that we will present and upload over the next few weeks and months. Here is another patient example of a coati that we turned into a little poster and used for education. I have to emphasize that One Health truly involves everyone, from the policymakers to the epidemiologists, healthcare workers, pet owners, farmers, veterinarians, lab workers, and the general public, and many, many more. Basically, everybody, and working together is key. Our big goal with this training program is to prevent and mitigate wildlife conflict or crime and decrease wildlife mortality and zoonosis risk for humans. Our preferred outcome for our patients, yay, is release. Our ultimate goal, you could say, is coexistence between humans and wildlife and One Health. Lovely would be global health. This is from a Belizean perspective, but we are connected much further. So with that, I am finished with these introduction and case examples. Thank you so much for joining and your interest. Do not hesitate to send us any questions. Here are our contacts and the website. And that is it.